Howdy, what's up? Welcome back to the podcast. Today we have another guest, a recurring guest, or a returning guest, I should say. We have Miss Rhea today. We're going to talk all sorts of things about women's health, how to find yourself in fitness, especially as a lady traveling through the world of self-care, self-love, and all those good things. So, hello, Miss
Hi.
Rhea.
Thanks for having me again. I'm
Yeah.
happy to be here. So my name is Rhea. I am a online fitness coach, personal trainer. I also design clothes. I have a clothing brand that's really tuned into just empowering people, small little messages that make their day. And essentially my purpose in life is just to empower women, empower everyone that I come across to just love themselves, to heal. And with that, it's mostly through fitness and that mindset that comes with that.
I think that's a hell of a process, I would imagine.
I feel like it comes naturally. I feel like we all have different purposes. For example, what you do with your company, with your podcast, is a similar thing. It just comes naturally, I'm assuming.
I think that it definitely can. I think it takes practice at the same time, but like understanding that there is I think we were talking a little bit earlier, like finding specific pain points and then learning how to communicate with individuals appropriately so that they understand like what's being like communicated and how to improve. Even though I don't necessarily like the word pain points, I feel like it's used in sales like 1,000 times over all the time.
Yeah.
I just like, what is the area of opportunity for us as a mutually beneficial relationship is kind of my perspective, which I guess is ultimately the same thing as a pain point. I'm just not really good about like focusing on like, let me find pain inside of you and then let me like use that to my advantage to make a sale. It's weird.
I guess that makes sense. I feel like whatever resonates with you,
Yeah.
but a mindset shift that's helped me is understanding that at the end of the day, you and I are just helping people in, I don't know, different industries, plastic surgery, cosmetics. At the end of the day, they can seem very like exploitive, which it can be, but the approach that you and I just leaning into what feels authentic and also aligns with our morals, I feel like would not be exploiting someone's pain necessarily, but alas.
So what was the transition from going, like, why did you go? Because I think when we first had the conversation, we were like, when we first met, it was at USAPL here in Las Vegas. And we were at a couple of different meets together. And you were really aggressive on the, what is it called? The shirts and clothing.
Yeah.
And then I think within the last 6 to 8-ish months, or maybe even more, it's been a little while.
It has been so wild.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
You switched.
Yeah.
Why?
I always knew that I had an entrepreneurial drive. And for the longest time, I thought it was in clothing. And now that I've matured, I realized that clothing was almost just a vessel to further these messages, to further my purpose of positivity, self-love, using my art and just putting it on like a shirt, putting it on a hoodie so that way people can go out into the world and, I don't know, take it with them across the country, across the continent, and someone like in line at Starbucks reads the back of their hoodie and they're like, wow, my day, that changed my perspective, right? And so I shifted my perspective to think it's not clothing itself, it's just a container for me to further this message, to further that purpose. And so it did really, really well initially when we talked about Self-Love Club. I never saw that amount of drive for people to just not even look at the price, right? And so a lot of that messaging with a self-love design really resonated with a lot of people. My business was doing really good. I was, having really good weekends when I would have those meets and have those events and have those expos. And then it got to a point where I kind of felt like I was just doing it because I knew that people would buy it, which is kind of counterintuitive because it's like in business you think, oh, isn't that a good thing? but it's like coming out with different colors, coming out with different things. And it's like you forget the actual purpose behind why I was there. Also, a thing with the self-love is I kept on leaning into that, and it slowly started to stray further and further away from the initial clothing brand aesthetic, which was very gym, very dark sport, very pump cover, and it looked like completely two different brands. And so people actually were questioning it. It got to a point where I was leaning too far into self-love, which is more of a soft, feminine, like cutesy type of aesthetic. Compare that to my older designs, which are very like bold, in your face, very loud, very graphic, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with the discrepancy of both, but it was like, how do I mesh that together? And after my last meet in person, which was USPA Nationals, I did not have fun doing it. I just had like such a expectancy on what the event would look like, how much money I would make, etc. And it just did not go anything according to how I anticipated it to be. And I lost sight of like, well, the conversations, right? That's the biggest thing. The people, the messages I spread on social media, but I was too in my head of like the certain look. And then I shifted to kind of rebrand everything, almost start from scratch and mesh those two together and kind of just treat it like a side project rather than like a full-blown business where I'm pressing everything, just thinking more larger scale where what is the purpose behind it? Is it to have a bunch of inventory, to have an office, to have all of these things, or is my purpose to get as many people wearing something as possible so that way they can spread the message and spread the positivity? So I switched to more of a drop shipping style and kind of just let it automate in the back end, switched to more of a coaching, which is more one-on-one, and I'm just honestly playing around and seeing what sticks and what doesn't.
It's fair.
Yeah, I know that was like loaded, but I didn't know where to start.
You got a lot of plates that you're spinning. It kind of sounds like, even though there's only two, right? You have these two major pieces. Inside of each of those pieces, there's a lot of motion going on.
I would say so. When it comes to my clothing, honestly, it's something that, like I said, turned into an automation thing. Just like create the design, slap it on Printful, and then call it a day, right? And with that, it's obviously not as lucrative, I feel, because although the profit margins, there's no overhead, I don't have to buy anything in bulk, I'm missing out from those in-person events when I had all my inventory. So it's the grass is greener on the other side thing. I'm playing around with it, but it does allow me the opportunity to lean into other sources of income. And there's a lot of debate on it. I mean, I don't know what your opinion is on this, but people always prefer to focus on one thing. People always recommend not to spread yourself too thin. But it's also like, well, if I'm called to these different projects, like, why would I not? You know what I mean? So when it comes to coaching, that can also turn into something that's automated. So it really just comes down to being productive with your time, I guess. What would you think?
I think that it's probably, I think from some of the most successful people I've talked to, they've said, like, focus on one thing.
Yeah.
And then you can, you have a fundamental base. There was just one client that I had, and he was mainly in real estate. And then adjacent to real estate, because he grew that company so large, he ended up owning a family office, and then was able to, now he owns bars, and now he owns, a whole bunch of other things, like new media stations, TV stations. And he, when I was telling him when I was trying to do all these things, he's like, Ben, I'm not in media. I'm in real estate, and I own a media company, but that's not what I do. And so you have to learn how to find the niche. And then once you found that niche, then you can kind of add things that ultimately benefit your niche, but aren't, or a place to put your money, or it's an investment, it's working for you. But you find that one thing. And I had a hard time doing that for a very long time. And I think I still kind of do, but now I have a better understanding of, okay, like how can I use the things that I like or that I want to do in order to benefit the main thing at the end of the day, right? But there's something at the center, and that thing at the center is, i.e., health. And then after that, like, okay, well, I can also, one, I enjoy podcasting, but at the same time, it gives me an opportunity to meet new people, get involved in the community. Like, there's a lot of benefits there for not just IE Health, but for Ben as himself.
Yeah.
So there's like I value community personally, and so like I like that as well. And then there's like a new sports team that it'll probably be like in the making like the next month, and so like how does that benefit me like personally, and then also for IE Health. So I still have a focus on like what's going on specifically with the heart of the business or heart of what's going on, and then kind of making sure that all the gears that I'm spinning, rather than plates, they're all feeding back into the main thing.
Yeah. I feel like the common theme between you and I is it might not be the best business practice for a lot of people, but for a lot of people, knowing that the business is also you, right? So it's not like you have many different brands. It's all under one encompassing, which is Rhea, which is Ben, you know?
I'm a businessman. I mean, come on. Yeah, I mean, that's the whole jam, right? You end up becoming the brand, which I think is valuable. But I mean, it's also, I would imagine, hard to manage if you don't have a lot of help around you. So having help is, like, I think, rather important. Do you have help around you? Do you have, like, a support system or team?
Professionally or, like, personally?
I think both. Both are important.
Professionally, I mean, I used to have VAs and stuff, but I feel like there's kind of a time and place. It's really pushed heavily to outsource, but in my thought process, you need to learn really to an expert level what you're doing before you outsource it to someone, because when you outsource your work, the people may not know exactly what you want. And so it's like, give me ABC, and they're like, okay, give you X, Y, and Z, you know? So when it comes to professional help, that sounds so funny. It sounds like
therapy.
Yeah. I'm
hey,
like, that's something
too.
else too.
That's important.
I have like a business mentor, like just a big group of people where you kind of like spit ideas with each other. I think that's something that's more important than outsourcing, in my opinion. Before outsourcing, invest into someone telling you you should do this, don't do this, and it will get you results way quicker because you're not going through the trial and error. Like, this goes hand in hand with coaching too. If there's anything going on in your life, not just fitness, but for example, finances, relationships, like, you are cutting out your own personal trial and error when you invest in someone saying, don't do this because this will happen. Do this because you won't waste your time. Small things like that. So professionally, that's my support system, I would say. And then personally, it's going to just be my loved ones, you know, my friends, my family, my partner, people who understand my personality. That's very important. I'm not sure if you can relate, but that is so important, because what business advice would work for someone else might not work well for me, because this is how I think. I work well in these certain rooms. I work well in these certain groups. I do not work well under these conditions. Other people might. And so kind of going off of what you see on the internet, if you bring that to, I don't know, a sister, a brother, a mom, a dad, who knows you and knows what you like and dislike, and bring that to their attention, they will literally call you out and say, I don't think that's a good idea because XYZ. So that's my support system.
It's a good support system.
Yeah. What about you?
Awesome. Oh, I think that I have a lot of really good people around. I do have a couple VAs, and sometimes I'm like, okay, why am I paying these people for this stuff?
Yeah.
But so like learning, there is a right time to have a VA involved. But then I have people like Tyus, who's been very helpful. Just like having people that are around you that are gonna like help you, like even with just ideas, like having a conversation, and like at the end of the day, you're like, oh my god, like that was a good idea, and like I don't know why I never think about that. But you don't know everything, and so like I think my both professional and personal communities, I think, are deep. And so I have people that are all the way in different industries that I can still reach out to. And then even inside those industries, there's similarities. I think there are transferable skills between all industries that will ultimately benefit the industry that I'm in. And so just like, I don't know, be friends, have good people around you, and like ask lots of questions, share what's going on, like be vulnerable, and then people can kind of like guide you in the right direction. Maybe they don't know the full story, but whatever advice that they give you, like you don't have to take it, right? And you just like listen and say, okay, like is this valuable, or is this like does this not apply? So be intelligent with one who you're asking, and also like do you just take everybody's advice? Like that's kind of insane. Like you would never get anywhere, I think. So yeah, I would say I have pretty deep roots in both professional and personal. And then there's a crossover, right? I think for most entrepreneurs, it's like your work becomes your life a lot of it. And so like a lot of the people that I'm around are at this point become more my friends. Like a lot of my clients become a lot of my family. And so like I'm invited to parties, or I'm invited to, I invite them to whatever's going on. Just making sure that they're around, that I'm around, that, we create a good community around, who we work with. Because if at the end of the day, I don't really like you and you don't really like me, we're probably going to work together. And so that's just like, it is what it is. You're not gonna have a good time. I'm not gonna have a good time. Let's part ways. But I like long lasting relationships. And so let's find a good fit personally here, professionally here, make sure that I can do my job well, make sure you can show up as a good client. But at the same time, like also be a good person, and then have a good person on the other end. So yeah, I would say that's about it. How did it feel during your transition from, like, you did this one thing for a long time? What were your feelings like when you traveled through the next one, like into the coaching world? Was it risky? Were you scared? What was that like?
With the clothing, so I'll kind of just run it through like a quick little timeline for people who, may be confused here. I really focused on building a brand for about 3-4 years. From here and there, I picked up some part-time jobs, picked up some freelancing things, but that was essentially my main focus, because I just innately knew deep down that if I never gave up, something would come of it. There would be some sort of success, which to a certain extent I was right. 3-4 years later, I created this design, and it just became iconic, famous, if you will, where people just loved it. And so that was the sort of success that I had found. And then I was almost going too fast for my own good. I think that has taught me a huge life lesson of being grateful. I think I was way into my ego at the time. Like, I built this and I'm here because of myself and my hard work, which is great, right? Like, well, relish in the fruits of your own labor. But to a certain extent, it was all about bragging rights to me. And so I got too fast for my own good, thought I was going to move out of state to, one of my dream states. Things did not work very quickly out there. God was like, oop, no humbling you. Took me back home, and I was heartbroken. I had no drive to continue. I didn't know what I was going to do, because I spent a lot of money out there. I spent a lot of money to get there. I spent a lot of money to come back. I didn't have a job because I was gone and I came back to nothing. Then I met a guy who was a really good distraction. So I had even more of an excuse to not get a job, right? And then he ended up getting me a job at my gym as a personal trainer. And I was like, okay, cool. And at first I was like, I love this. Like, I'm able to go to the gym, which I do already, get paid for it, talk to people, which I do already, get paid for it, and this is awesome. And then again, it got kind of too fast for my own good. I was like, yeah, keep on giving me clients. Like, I can take it. I can make so much money. I'll be here from 8 to 8 every day and work out in between my gaps. It's going to be so good. And burnout I'm sure you're familiar with that term.
It happens very common in this industry where people just like they want to take on so many clients and like there's this ideal life where again like yeah you have an hour break during your lunch or maybe like an early lunch like
Yeah.
11 to 12 because everyone works out in the morning so you have a little break. You're like well I'll train and then I'll eat and then I'll just like train the rest of my clients for the rest of the day and then you realize like holy shit that's actually really freaking hard.
Yeah. And then so from here and there, I used like the little money that I had for Bolt into going to Seattle for like this powerlifting CrossFit meet event ish thing, which was nice. It was a cool weekend, but that spark that I initially had just like was lost. I kind of felt like it was a chore doing it. I felt like I wasn't passionate about it anymore, which is like fine. Came back home, kept on training, kept on living my life where the highlight of my day was in the morning before I started work. I was so overworked. I couldn't think straight. And with something so intimate as personal training, it's like people are coming to me with their most vulnerable pain points that they've been struggling with their entire life. And I'm kind of half-assing the session because I got 12 other people after you. I got 12 people before you. And it was kind of breaking my heart to not help people as much as I wanted to, as much as I could, especially because with the nature of the system, I could only give them my attention for 30 minutes to an hour. And even then, it wasn't my full attention. So coincidentally, I ended up going to this business networking fitness professional event, which I knew nothing about. I just got invited by my friend and was like, okay, cool. I realized when I got there that it was also kind of a promotion thing for this business mentor that I was talking to you about. And it was still a very valuable night because there was different speakers. It wasn't solely to promote the mentorship. But when I was there, I saw the possibilities. And not everything's about money, but also at the same time for, getting paid hourly. And that's not even guaranteed if a client will cancel on you or reschedules or they're late and you're sitting there waiting, compared to seeing these people who are selling privately their self. They're selling packages that are thousands of dollars and they have a mindset that is completely different than I was surrounding myself with. Still engaging with this guy who was a good distraction, not really focusing on bolts because it was too easy to get comfortable, After a long day of work, I'm going to sleep, So after seeing that, I was very inspired. And then I reached out to this mentor and then went from there to learn more about taking my coaching personally rather than working under a corporation. Right? It gave me the confidence, but to a certain extent, definitely not sustainable for anyone's wallet, for my mind, for my body. And got my first client and then got my second client. And then I realized that I probably should stop wasting my time because at that point, I was Ubering to work. I didn't have a car at the time. So I was like losing money going to work.
Rough.
And I was like, I just have to quit this and kind of lean in and see what happens here. So that was my transition.
It's a hell of a transition.
Yeah, it's
That's
crazy.
like a hell of a story.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like it was both tough, but then obviously at the same time very inspiring. I think working for a corporation is hard. I think that especially when working with a client, like you're supposed to be there, you're supposed to be present, and a lot of times in the corporate setting, it's just like we're looking at numbers, and I get it. Like you're still kind of looking at numbers, even like professionally as an independent individual, but like you're back to back with all of these people, and then all these people just have an expectation that you're just going to be on all the time. I think it's not real. It's not sustainable. Like you're going to end up dropping off. You're going to have bad days. So I ended up leaning into just being like, hey, I'm feeling off today. Like just being honest and being candid, but that's still not necessarily ideal. But at the same time, if they're coming to me being vulnerable, then I can come to them being vulnerable as well. And then I think it ends up building a little bit more rapport with that relationship. So even now when I'm working with clients, like, dude, I'm not feeling good today. And they're like, okay, cool. And like, tomorrow it's going to be them, like we're both human. It's just I get to also have fewer clients throughout the day so that if I am having one of those days, then it's less draining. But at the same time, there's also a lot of like fulfillment and am I working out enough? Am I doing the sauna? Am I doing, I don't really cold plunge, but if you do that, then, am I doing cold plunge? I would hate it, but I would not, but am I taking care of myself? Am I getting enough sleep? Am I drinking? These things that ultimately like make me a high performer in my profession that I absolutely love. Mm-hmm. And I think like being an independent gives me, I don't know, some focus with that. And also gives me more like, you have to take on the responsibility for that as well. And so I am like, everything is tuned into this. Like we're going to have lion's mane in the morning, alpha GPC in the morning, some ashwagandha, make sure I get my protein. Like we're going to do all the right things to make sure that whenever I see my first client that we're having some good conversation and that they feel heard, that, we're taking care of them, all of these things. And I think, it happens way too often, unfortunately, where people just want to take on so much. And then we fuel ourselves with caffeine all the time. It's just kind of like how it goes in this industry. Like the biggest addicts are personal trainers, I feel like. Yeah. And yeah, so I mean, that's wild. So have you been able to continue to grow? What was it like working with a mentor? What does that relationship look like? What were the expectations that you had? And then did it follow through with those expectations?
Yeah, I really like the points you made of everyone being human. I think that's something that I think every single listener right now can take away, that, you're human. So calm down on yourself a little there. You can't always be a perfect robot. With my mentor, it was so rewinding back to that night, it was a lot of speakers, a lot of people in the mentorship group, a lot of people in the circle where I was like, I feel heard, I feel understood, because I was kind of trapped in this little box for a couple of months, right? I haven't been doing my trips per usual. I haven't really been doing any meets. I haven't really been surrounding myself with my entrepreneur friends or my friends who are very into spirituality, self-growth, bettering themselves, right? I was kind of in this little box with the distraction boy and comfort job.
Fair.
And, it's something that I preach so much on my social media, in person. But at the end of the day, like, sometimes people fall short. Like, that is something that people can easily get caught into without even realizing it. And so when I was there, I was like, oh, I'm so interested, but I always am very wary when it comes to purchasing high ticket experiences or investments, because I've purchased something in the past, sometimes things don't live up to expectations or deliverables. That's honestly just how it is in this industry. When thinking about buying a high ticket item, please do your research because on the sales call, you and I have some sort of knowledge about psychology, about sales, this, they'll get us too, we're human too.
Yeah.
So definitely sleep on it for a couple of days or a couple of weeks, get non-biased experience reviews, right? And so I was with a couple of my friends that I met at that event, and they're in it, and I get to see their experience firsthand. They're telling me, oh, it's this, and that's nice. It's transparent. So I would definitely recommend someone to, if you can't do an in-person friend, just type it in on a reliable website, go from there. And then I got on a phone sales call, right, saying, I'm doing this. They were saying, okay, awesome, can you invest this? And I'm like, to be honest, I can't. And that was the conversation, So I was in Hawaii fast forward a couple of weeks later, and I was super stressed for some reason. I think a lot of the anxiety was manifesting in my body. And I was thinking, like, at the time there was a lot of management issues. Distraction boy, box boy was kind of causing me some issues at work as well. There was just a lot of things on the back of my mind. And I was literally like, I'm in the most beautiful place ever. I'm very lucky. I'm very privileged and blessed to be in this space. But my body and my mind are not here. My body's holding on to anxiety. My body's holding on to things from back home. And I'm always worried. I'm thinking about what's going to be like when I get back home. What's work going to be like? And I was like, that is so stupid. I was like, that is so stupid that I'm thinking about this. And coincidentally, I get a text saying like, hey, I think it was some sort of holiday, some sort of national holiday.
Yeah.
Like, we're running a sale, like, and that was the amount that I was able to invest. And I was like, geez Louise, like, let's do it. Because I've been sleeping on it for a couple of months, talked to friends, and the expectations set with this kind of investment just included a whole lot of information, about selling, about marketing, about social media, pretty much like the three things that one needs to make money online and to create an online business. And I do know about marketing. I could get better at selling. I know about social media, but it's the fact that you're investing into someone. When they tell you something, you kind of can't say no. Similar to when people invest in you and I as fitness coaches. They know eat less, move more. People know to stop going to McDonald's, to stop going In-N-Out, to stop going to all these places. But when they pay someone to hold them accountable, they are not going to those places anymore. So it's a similar nature. When I pay him, I know I'm not going to procrastinate posting. I know I'm going to DM people who like my content. I know that I'm going to post story polls asking who's interested, even though I might think it's cringy, because I chose to invest into him, which is essentially investing into myself. At the end of the day, I feel like that's what investing into a mentor is. Like, when people invest into you, people invest into me, they're not investing into us. They're investing into themselves, and we're just that tool. We're just that vessel to kind of open their eyes into more knowledge, more confidence that they can do this thing.
It's really, really beautifully said. I feel like
Thanks.
that's I think really well done.
Thank you.
think that, I guess I sometimes, and maybe this is putting too much value in like what I provide, but it's like ultimately they're investing in themselves. I just happen to be the vessel. I think that's pretty interesting. I don't know. I've never really thought about it like that. I think it's, I don't know, humbling to some degree.
It is. I don't know if you have this experience, but with some clients, there's, always going to be someone who they could pay $10,000 and you can tell them this, that, the other. You can tell them this is why, this, that, the other. But some people, like, they're not going to do it because being comfortable, maybe it's not the right time. Maybe they don't feel ready enough to make a change. Maybe the pain isn't big enough for them to change. So at the end of the day, it's like, you did your part, but that's why it's investing into themselves, because you could be doing everything perfectly, but if the client doesn't uphold their end of the agreement, then they're the problem. It's like, it's fine, you and I are not babysitters. To a certain extent, I'll check up on, hey, what's going on, forget about the gym right now, like, woman to woman, maybe for you, like, man to man, what's going on, let's just talk about it. The gym is going to be, from a physiological standpoint, if the gym is going to be an additional stressor, it's going to be inflammatory. It's going to mentally just not be good for you. So forget about the gym, like, what's going on, so that way we can just focus on small things. And if they're not receptive to that, then at the end of the day, it's like the investment into themselves, there was no return. So interesting to think about, I guess.
Yeah, it is. I think, like, okay, I had one client that paid a lot of money for for some coaching as well.
Yeah.
And his thing was like, I didn't think that I could work that hard until I put that money up, and then I realized I created, I did 2 years of projects in 3 months. I coded just almost every single day, but it was just like the fact that he put the money up. Now that there's a risk on the other side of it, and the bigger the risk, then it's like, well, then I might as well put my money, like I might as well work because I already put that kind of money up.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes I am not the best about like following through with, like I make that commitment to that thing, and then I can just kind of expect it to change. But at the same time, like the change has to be within Ben as well.
That's good.
The money is definitely helpful, and having whatever like work on the back end of that cash is helpful. But at the same time, that change that's happening because of the money is not just external, but it should also be internal.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever experienced training someone for free. I know initially that's kind of a controversial topic, but some people recommend, for example, Alex Ramosi recommends training like the first 5 free, so that way you can have testimonials, so that way you can have experience under your belt, so that way you have confidence. And so in the past, I've trained people for free, I've coached people for free, and I've noticed that there is no drive, I guess, after like the first week, due to the fact that it's like, what is changing, right? Like, it is so easy to almost let someone else down rather than let yourself down. Did I word that correctly? Like, when I'm coaching someone for free, they would almost rather let me down than
not
change, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, well, it's free anyway, right? There's no value associated with this thing. It's just a thing that's happening. I think that training for free on the front end, I mean, especially like, let's say if I'm brand new to the industry, then I would probably tell that person to train for free.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like people, sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good.
But I agree completely, because a lot of people on the other end say, charge this much, like, know your worth. And a couple of years ago, I'm like, yeah, I totally will. I go on a sales call and I'm like, this is how much I'm charging. And they can obviously tell, like, I do not know anything about anything. So I'm like, yeah, like, to a certain extent, I agree with you for sure.
Yeah, like value or price where I think is where value meets cost. If you end up putting a cost over where the value is, then people are going to leave. But if you can match those, or if you can exceed value over cost, then ultimately you're going to retain clients a hell of a lot better. And so, especially at the very beginning, maybe you aren't the best coach, but like it's free. Okay, well, value kind of exceeds cost because there is no cost. And then as you get better, then you can start charging more because now you have more experience. And then you get to the point, even now, I think even if you are an experienced coach, like there's still wiggle room.
Yeah.
Like I have a client that's like, Ben, are you going to fire me whenever I retire? It's like, no, I wouldn't. You adjust to that client. Like that client has been with me for years. Why would I just all of a sudden, well, you can't pay me $1,000, like done. Like there's a relationship there that I value probably more than the cash, right? Like I'm with this person for years and I want to stay in that person's life and that person wants to stay in my life. There's also a service being completed as well. And so like, let's make sure that this works out for you. But it also works out for me. I remember seeing this post. It was like a tattoo artist inside of his shop, and they had like 5 people come in back to back to back that were all like, hey, I have $250 to pay for a tattoo. And the guy was like, sorry, 400 minimum. And then he turns all these people away. And finally he gets that one person that comes in and it's like, all right, I have $400. And so he does that one tattoo, but he spent the entire day doing absolutely nothing when he could have serviced all 4 of those people that were paying, or all 4 of those people that were paying $250 for the session. And then finally got that one that was paying the $400. And then just make sure that whatever the service you're providing is also reflective of the cost. And so maybe I'm not buying gifts for individuals as much anymore because there's not as much leeway in there, right? Like I do monthly gifts for some of my clients that are on like pay on the upper end, because like that's like they're like it's included like pretty much, right? And so or like let's do free events for that individual. Like how can we support you in other ways versus maybe somebody else who can only do, and maybe this is shitty and not great, but like person that can afford less, well, then like I'm sorry, but like I can give you an hour a week or 2 hours a week rather than what I would give somebody else. You know, it's just like it's gotta not you can't like put yourself too far out there, but at the same time you don't want to like just push people away. You know.
Yeah, I agree. It's all about discernment, I feel, because there's been instances where, I get on the phone with a college student and they're like, I can only do this much. And it's like not that different than what I said. And I'm like, okay, you know what? That's fine. But if someone can only do like half of the price that I said, like, okay, but how's that fair to someone who I just got off the phone with a week ago who paid full? So it's all about discernment. And like you mentioned, how can I support you? I feel like that's a question that all professionals, not just in our industry, need to ask, because sometimes what we think someone needs isn't what they actually need. Like my partner, manager at a gym, wants to build up the people under him to be better salesmen, to be better marketing, to be better trainers, to be better assistant managers. And it's like, he's asking me, how do I get them to care? How do I do this, that, and the other? And it's like, what works for you, what approach, that aggressive, like, do you really want it approach may not work for them. So I say, like, sometimes you have to compare it to what they're interested in. Like, for example, you and I, we'd compare it to the gym. We'd compare professional and business to the gym. Like, sometimes you don't see results right away, but you got to check off your boxes still. That would make sense for someone like you and I. So that question, how can I support you, I think is really, really valuable, because sometimes they don't need more sessions. Maybe they need you to get on the phone with them and just listen to them. Something small,
I think some of those sessions are so valuable, and like I think that sometimes we get so pigeonholed into, like we have to hit our workout today, and you don't realize like maybe like you adjust that workout depending on how that person's like feedback is for the day. Like they're not feeling too good. Maybe something's going on at home. Maybe they're busy that day, and they're just fucking stressed. It's like, all right, cool. Like let's adjust this a little bit, and let's talk a little bit more. Or like I know you like the sauna. Like I'm gonna put you in the sauna for 15, 20 minutes of our session, like because that's probably what you need and probably what's most valuable for you today. So I'll ask occasionally for clients like, what can I do to increase value for you? Like if I and I don't know, maybe I should be more proactive rather than reactive. But when I start feeling like I don't know if like where this person's at, I'll give a question. I'll ask like, so is there anything else that I can help to support you? And sometimes I've had some clients that are like, dude, everything's great, like you don't have to do anything. And I've had other clients that are like, could you give me a couple meals like that I could work with? It's like done, like like 100%. And so like you go home immediately and you follow through, which is a big part of that. And you just all she wanted was 2 meals. So I created 2 meals, gave a macro breakdown, gave a shopping list, and she was like, perfect, that's all I need. Great. Like it could be something so small. So I think it's very, very important to ask like how like what is your coaching style is another one, right? Are you a kinesthetic learner? Like understanding the way that this person learns is also rather important. So you tailor things specifically to them.
That's interesting. Coaching style. I feel like I don't want to say cookie cutter, but everyone has like kind of a similar approach in my head. But there's a balance or kind of synergy between physiological and psychological, because in my head it's very logical. It's very, you weigh this much, you want to lose weight, okay, now you eat this much. And that's the same formula for every single person on the planet. But from a learning standpoint, like, I don't know, comment response to check-in versus video response to check-ins. Just something to think about, I guess.
Yeah. I like, and also where do you record the camera from? Does somebody even want to be recorded? Like sometimes people like, hey, make sure maybe the angle isn't the best, but you have them record it like back facing rather than front facing. Maybe some people want to upload it on YouTube because that makes it gives them accountability. I have one client that does that. Like she posts it on YouTube and she's super uncomfortable with it, but like it gives her some accountability. And then I have other clients that are just like just sending it through the app, like, or I'll just text it to you because I don't want to post it anywhere. It's like that's great, like that, like whatever's comfortable for you. But like there's everybody learns differently. I like the education piece of it more than anything else. Like the accountability piece kind of comes with it, but like I want to give somebody the education that they could almost like if they really needed to, they could do my job. Like let me give everything to you. Like you still like we're at like you're starting today, and I started a long time ago, so like the gap is pretty extensive. But it like but I'm going to continue to do my best to like give you everything that I know, because then it doesn't benefit me to hold secrets from clients. Like I'm gonna help them not be as best as they can. Like that's insane. That's insanity. That's a bad coach. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, because essentially the goal of you and I is giving them enough value and enough education so that way they don't necessarily need you. They in 6 months they can step away comfortably and be able to do it on their own. But a lot of clients were new because of that value of that rapport that we have built.
Most people don't leave.
Yeah.
Most people, and it's like, yes, they could probably go into the gym and get a workout that they understand like pretty normally. But there is something about the connection that you can build with somebody, the accountability that it provides for some people. Like some people just like if it's not on my calendar, I'm not going to show up. Like it's just, I'm not, right. People are just busy. They're just like, I'm just not going to do it. Which there's several of my clients. And so like it's just an accountability factor that they have somebody that showed up for them, so they're going to show up for that person as well. And then I forgot what I was going to say.
It's okay. What do you want to talk about?
Damn, lost train of thought like immediately.
That's okay.
I don't know. We were talking about just keep like everybody has a different level of accountability. Like why are they there? And okay, so they stay because of the rapport that you build, right? That's ultimately the idea. So there's something about the relationship that I absolutely love. Like there's the education piece, and then like actually building a really like fruitful, like joyous, fun relationship. Like it's something that's just beautiful to me.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I have a question for you then. What is the separation, or should there be separation between, yourself and your personal relationships? Because in the past, like when my clients leave me or they choose to go to a different coach, I take it personally. And so what's that kind of balance between I do build personal relationships with my clients, and sometimes I take it personally when they don't want to continue the professional?
Then I mean, it just get a background of like why. I mean, I haven't really had anybody leave me. Like when the last, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, I've not had any client leave outside of like me leaving the city.
Yeah.
Like
that's really good retention.
I left Texas and I changed a job in between that, and so then I lost clients. But I was in an entire different industry at that point. And then I moved here, and then most people stuck with me outside of when the gym shut down. Like, or I shouldn't say most people, because that's not true. I don't know. The people that did stay after that transition have consistently been with me for like 2 years, since I've been here. And so, but if they left me, they left me. Like it is what it is. But also understanding why do they leave me? Is it because they moved towns? Like, okay, it is what it is. Because it was too expensive. Okay, great. Well, like let's have the conversation and like let's see how we can make this work. Like just I guess we get an understanding of why. And if it really is like I just didn't like the style of training, man. It's like okay, like I'm not gonna be the best coach for everybody. That's fine. Thank you for trying it. I hope you learned something. I hope you got value out of it. And then if we're still buds, then we're still buds. Like, let's hang out, let's do whatever. But I don't like, yes, it's more than just the money for me. Like, it's more than just the professional piece. Like the professional piece is kind of, maybe this isn't the best thing as a trainer, as a coach, but like, it's almost like comes second and then the relationship comes first for me. The relationship's always first. And so if they leave me professionally, like that's cool. But like, you want to grab a beer, or like, hey, do you need something? Like, do you need me to help you move out of your house? Like, I'll still be there for you, because because I feel like it's hard to like have a good community of people around you. So like that should come first, and then the professional piece comes second. I also outsource a lot of stuff. So like if you need nutrition coaching, even though sure I have like I've done a lot of nutrition work, I outsource it. Like I'm just gonna bring somebody else in there to do it, so that like that person can eat too. Like there's plenty to go around. That person also does training. Great, but she does the nutrition stuff for me, and then if she needs any help with training, then I can help her there. Um, I have a massage therapist. Could I do like I have the skills to do that? Yeah, but I have somebody else that can do it, and so like I share my clients with multiple other professions already, and so it's not necessarily new for me.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I like that empathetic approach, because if you don't know why, I feel like that's where a lot of the approach I take is very personal, because I'm not giving that the opportunity. My brain just goes to worst case scenario. Like they hate me, they hated how I did it. I didn't do the best I could have, which is unfair because of the lack of context.
Yeah, it's you're not gonna be perfect, and also at the same time, like learning when to take accountability. Like, did I really fuck up that client? Like, did I really not show up for him? Was that not a good place in my life? Like, all these things are normal and real things, and maybe it's so bad that you're not gonna be, or like it's bad enough that you can't build a relationship or rebuild that relationship. Or that person's just like, yeah, I just don't feel like investing anymore into that and into you for that reason. It's like, okay, well, how can I make sure that the next time that doesn't happen? How do I improve my retention? Is it, like whenever I had, like, let's say I'm in a relationship, making sure that my relationship doesn't end up spilling over into my professional life, where it's like, okay, now I can't operate like with a client because that's all that's on my mind. Like maybe I should choose a better partner. I don't know. Drinking was a big one for me. Am I drinking too much that it's like now spilling over, and I'm not like, I can't train all the clients that I want to because I'm hungover. I'm not feeling good. Like that's not fucking cool. Well, I guess like let's do something about it, right? Either take accountability or continue to fuck up, right? Like I'd rather take the accountability.
Yeah, and that's very, very humbling. Sometimes I don't want to. It's humbling to look in the mirror and realize that the reason you are in the situation that you're in, there's always something that you could have done. But it also gives you that space to move forward. So it's a double-edged sword, being mature enough to kind of have that moment of, hey, I messed up.
I feel like I mess up. It's usually my go-to. It's like, what did I do? Which is also not the best. Like
Yeah.
I like aggressively for a long time was like, it's always like, what did I do? How could I have made this better? Like taking like every part of it, maybe even the relationship, like whatever professional or personal relationship it wasn't necessarily the best. There's still something like inside of me that's like, what did I do wrong? How could I have made this better? Even after like social interactions, if I go to a networking event, I'll like replay all conversations in my head and it's like, how could I have made that conversation better? Like it's almost obsessive, like disgustingly. Whether like it could be like a friend's house I'm gonna go over and like, okay, this is kind of insane, but so it is what it is. I would think like, okay, I know that this community of people that I'm going to go, and maybe everybody does this. I don't know. I know this community of people is. I went to a CrossFit like kind of group. I know that these individuals dress this kind of way. I know that they like these kind of brands. And so let me make sure that I also am able to like fit in with that community, even though maybe it's not necessarily authentic to band, but I want to make sure that I'm welcomed into that community. And then I would like obsess about like, okay, what are my conversations going to be like? How do I interact with these individuals? And then afterwards I would leave and be like, okay, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? Like it's like obsessive. It's not necessarily the best thing in the world.
I don't know. I feel like there's some flaws in the fact that what is right and what is wrong, because it's purely from your own subjective nature of what they might have perceived. I mean, less on a macro scale and more of a micro. I would just say like a tip for that is the easiest way to have a better conversation is just to listen more than you talk, like for two reasons. That way you can give a better response, and also you're more likable when people talk. People just love to talk psychologically. So that's more of a micro scale, but larger scale, I feel like the flawed mindset in that is, And obviously, it is because it's, like you said, obsessive, right? It's too extreme for your own good. But I would just kind of remember, like, well, if I did something wrong, at whose expense? Because, there's morality and there's basic subjective things that we should not do, that society tells us, like, hey, you probably shouldn't, like, scream a cuss word at a party at someone, like a stranger. There's like small things that ingrained in our society that you shouldn't do. But also at the same time, like, I think it goes back to what I mentioned earlier, like giving yourself that grace of, a lot of the people that you had conversations with might have not understood or heard a lot of the wrongdoings that you may perceive, because it's Ben's idea of what was wrong.
My perception of that is also like maybe somebody doesn't look at my workout plans and like really understand like the breakdown of that plan, but I can look at that plan and say, shit, like I shouldn't have put that exercise first, like, because I know better. And so I have, if I understand psychology well enough, or I understand like, if I understand, let's stay with physiology. If I understand physiology enough, then I have a responsibility to create effective programming. If I understand how psychology works well enough and how people end up like creating a likeness or a trust towards people, and then I fail on that end, I'm held responsible for that thing. So if I know people like it when the people are going to like you and trust you more if they talk more, great. And so if I end up dominating the conversation and I walk away, I'm going to think like, fuck. Like why did I do that? And how could I have done better? If my goal is to create trust, in the same thing, like to create trust, people want to see your hands usually, right? And so like I want to make sure that somebody sees my hands. If my hands are behind me, hands are in my pockets, okay, what am I doing? Why? And so I have a responsibility, I think, of those things because I know them. But maybe that's not true. But that's kind of my thought. I make the analogy.
I don't know enough about this subject to be able to, I feel like, benefit you. I feel like my advice might be the first thing that comes to mind. So I don't want to like explain something that may be false, but I feel like it might be an overarching theme of just overthinking, which is limiting you from talking eloquently and talking in a way that relates to them, because you're focused on the perfect amount, if that makes sense.
There is no perfect amount, and I get that. Maybe. I don't know. It's also not for me to judge at the end of the day. It's for them to make that judgment. Like I can walk away and think that it was entirely shitty, and then they think it's fine, which happens probably more often than not. Like I walk away from a situation, I'm like, man, I didn't really like that, and like people will be like, why? Like that was great, and I was like, I don't know. There was something about it that I don't think that I really enjoyed, and so, maybe.
If they keep on coming back to you, then that means that they didn't see it as negatively as you did.
Correct. Yeah, that happens. But same thing with workouts. Like again, like if I know well enough, if I know better, then I should be held to that standard.
When it comes to workout programming, optimal can mean many different things, because there's optimal in terms of their goals, there's optimal in terms of their schedule, there's optimal in terms of how much time you guys have, in terms of all these different factors. And so I believe as long as it is effective and it is giving the client value, then there is no need to worry about cosmetics as much, if that makes sense. Like perfecting everything, because at the end of the day, someone who may need your help is not worried about little tiny 1% things when they are more concerned about like 50% things or 100% things, if that makes sense.
I think I guess that's like, I feel like I got the 50% things done right? Like they got those portions. Like
Yeah.
we understand those things. Show up well dressed, be educated, look clean, brush your teeth.
Yeah.
You know, do those things. Like show up is also a big piece. Like, did you show up on time? But then like when when I go to a restaurant and they like, are you guys like done with your food? And like, yeah, it's okay. We'll box it for you. Every single time I'm like, I'm tipping. I don't fucking care. Double. I don't know. But I would automatically tip more just because they went through that little extra effort that not everybody has to go through. So like if I made the little extra effort of grabbing a client a towel, if I made the extra effort of letting the other person speak, if I made the extra effort to make sure my hands were present, maybe it's uncomfortable at the very beginning because it's not normal. It's not like a regular habit. But once it becomes a habit, then it's just like, oh, this is how I exist, and then it makes everybody else around me feel more comfortable. Like, this is pretty neat. Just because I practiced trying to make sure that other people had a sense of trust or whatever, I can build better rapport with these individuals. Like, I don't know. I like quality service. I like doing the extra 1% thing. And sometimes I obsess about it.
I feel like it is good to do that 1% thing. And in this conversation, it's got me thinking, what is the line? What is the line between over obsessing about the 1% thing, and what is the line between half-assing the work? And to me, I think the line is when it stops feeling good, because getting the client the towel makes you in turn feel good. Letting them finish their story and open up to you about something, that feels good intrinsically to you because you gave them that space. And when it leans into the obsessive part is when things start to feel bad, where you're hyperfixated on, did I do this wrong? I feel like that's when the 1% starts losing its value because it's at the expense of you, if that makes sense.
I kind of agree and kind of don't. Part of me doesn't because I'm like, well, sometimes I hate squatting. Sometimes I really hate listening to somebody's story, but I'm going to let them do it because it's a good practice for me, even though the story might suck.
Yeah.
And so, like, yeah, it's uncomfortable, but it's probably still good practice.
Yeah.
So, meh, I don't know.
It's all about discernment. I think that's the theme of this podcast right now is what may reign true for me, because I haven't had that experience with that obsessiveness nature that you are referencing. But for you, it might be something completely false. That's your truth, though. So it's just interesting to think about the fact that we agree to disagree, I guess.
Yeah, it's fun. What do you got coming up next? What's next in the life of Miss Rhea?
I am searching. Growing a service-based business is a lot longer than I think online leads on. It's referrals, it's renewals, it's word of mouth, and all of those things come with time. Raising your prices comes with time and experience, and knowing how to scale effectively without running yourself into the ground is something that takes longer. Nothing worth having is going to be a quick fix. So while I'm growing my clientele, I'm just searching for different ways so that I can sustain myself, looking for different ways that I can use my skills, but also have consistent income so that way I can focus on these things without being stressed and acting out of, I have to do this. I don't know if you disagree. I know a lot of men work well under those back against the wall survival mode, but I feel like for me, I've been in that for a little too long, and so I don't like the idea of continuing to onboard clients because I need the money. I know a big theme that we talked about today was professional, and the money would come second, and relationships and helping them comes first. And for me, it's kind of the opposite, and I want to switch it back. And I feel like the way to do that is by coming up with ways to automate Bolt, coming up with ways to automate coaching and kind of outsource some things. And with those two, giving myself the time to kind of bring on more projects, something part-time, maybe some freelance opportunities, just ways that I can keep myself afloat and not feel like I'm treading.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
Where can people find you?
People can find me on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all of the big social media platforms. And it's just Rhea Patag, RIAPATAG. Pretty easy. And if you are interested in the clothing, that is going to be boltactive.com. So everything is going to be there. If you like this crop top I'm wearing, that's from there too. So check it out and maybe you see something that you like.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all. Love you. Bye.